Then the Lord said to Moses, I will rain down bread from heaven for you. The people are to go out each day and gather enough for that day. Jesus said to them, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never be hungry, and whoever believes in me will never be thirsty. Greetings, my friends. I'm Jeff Van Orden, the pastor of the Bethany Lutheran Church in Palmyra, New Jersey, and I'd like to welcome you to the first in a series of video messages that I'll be recording and posting during the time that we're separated from each other, faithfully maintaining social distance as we've been asked to do for the remainder of this COVID-19 pandemic. I'm sure that most of us are doing everything we possibly can to follow the lead of the scientists, doctors, and other experts who are leading the effort to mitigate the spread of this virus and hopefully minimize the number of our neighbors and family members who get sick. Unfortunately, though, it's hard to avoid getting ourselves tied into knots by all the breaking news and the ever-changing opinions about how to respond to what appears to be a situation that we've simply never seen before. All of us want to know what to do, and more often than not, we just don't know. So questions abound. Can we really stay home for weeks? If we do that, how will we maintain our safety and our sanity? Can we survive? Or to put it in the simplest terms, how will we be fed? The feeding of the 5,000 was an important event in Jesus' life, so much so that all four of the gospel writers record it. And not surprisingly, after it happened, the writers tell us, the crowd was amazed. They followed Jesus around the Sea of Galilee, wanting more. Unfortunately, the crowd that followed Jesus was following him not because they were eager to hear more of what he had to say. They followed him because they wanted another free meal. It's as if they were demanding, do what you did before, Jesus. Feed us. Yes, for the crowd, it was all about the food. And Jesus, who clearly understands the crowd's motivation, tells them that they're foolish to focus on food that spoils. Instead, he tells them to pay attention to food that lasts forever. I am the bread of life, he says. Whoever eats this bread will never die. One of the central truths that the Bible reveals over and over again is that God knows us, really knows us. In fact, God knows us better than we know ourselves. God knows what makes us do what we do. God knows how hungry we are and what we'll do to be fed. Jesus references the first text that I read a moment ago when he addresses the crowd. It's a story that they would know by heart. Our ancestors ate the manna in the wilderness. Jesus tells them God gave them bread from heaven to eat. He reminds the people that the Israelites wandering in the desert hundreds of years earlier were no different from the crowd that followed him around that lake. And indeed, they were no different from us. They wanted God to feed them. They needed God to feed them. You see, God knows that giving us our daily bread will only satisfy our hunger for a little while. Tomorrow we'll be hungry again. Similarly, Jesus discovered that the people in the crowd who ate their fill when they participated in his miraculous meal were not satisfied for long. They followed him, hoping to be fed yet again. Why does God feed us? We might reasonably ask. Is it because we, like dogs and cattle and squirrels and birds, need food to sustain us so we can be hungry again tomorrow? I think not. The bread that God gives us is more than that. The God we worship is a God of hope. Hope for the remainder of the crisis that we are now dealing with, and hope for years to come. When Jesus tells his disciples, "I am the bread of life, whoever comes to me will never be hungry, and whoever believes in me will never be thirsty," he points them toward the future. He reminds them that the bread that God provides lasts forever. The first person infected with COVID-19 arrived in Seattle, Washington in January. And the first real evidence that this novel coronavirus is likely to spread everywhere in the United States happened earlier this month. And lately, I've decided that when I think about this virus, as I do so often, the most difficult thing to cope with is the recognition that there was no end in sight. What we initially hoped would be a few weeks is now projected to be lasting until midsummer. Who knows what the projections will be next week and the week after that? It's downright depressing to think about not returning to normal life for that long. So what are we to do? What is the faith response to this harsh reality? Where is the bread of life we so desperately need? Well, in the midst of all of the craziness we see and hear about each day, one thing we can do is look for evidence that God is still at work in the world. We can look for God sightings, as they are sometimes called. The other day, I received an email from a neighbor. We have a group email list in our Philadelphia neighborhood. And the message went something like this. "Hi, I'm a student at Temple. And now that classes are online, I have extra time on my hands. So if any of you need an errand run or have anything else that I can do, please let me know." That email was one of the best things that happened that day. It made me realize that we are all in this mess together and that there are people who I don't even know very well who are willing to reach out and help. To reach out with no other motivation than love. And that is an example of God continuing to work in the world. It is an example of the bread of life. Here's my suggestion. Over the next few weeks, or for as long as we need to keep our distance, whenever you see an example of a God sighting, whenever someone does something that demonstrates that love is still alive and well, make a note of it and share it with the rest of us. You can post your God sighting on our website or send it to me in a text or an email, and I'll make sure it gets posted. You see, in truth, we have no idea when the world turned upside down by COVID-19 will return to what we think of as normal. And it may take many lifetimes for the kingdom of this world to become the kingdom of God. But when God feeds us with the bread of life, God expects us to set out on a journey whose purpose is to make that happen. When God feeds us with the bread of life, God feeds us so we can work the works of God. So look out for God sightings in the weeks ahead and see what you can do to share the bread of life each day. Blessings to you all, and join me again for another video message on Sunday.